Okay, so now we're going to move on to the cylinder heads, guys, on the 440. Now this 440 head, I think I talked in some other videos about this. It's gotten a bad rap. It was a later model 440 head that they made, I don't know, 72, 73 and on up or something like that. It's not a 906 casting, but I've looked at the flow numbers and done some research, and these actually flow almost exactly the same as the 906, and they have the same size chamber. So it's basically the same head. The only difference is on the exhaust seats here, they induction hardened the seats. This was Chrysler's first attempt at making a cast iron head for unleaded fuel. So we're not going to put hard seats in this head for two reasons. Number one, they're already hardened. Now, I did come across some posts on the internet that said, oh, once you grind the seats, you get down below the hardness. But, you know, to be honest with you, I'm going to call that nonsense, because I've actually cut seats on this particular casting before, these heads that Chrysler induction hardened the seats, and I cut them for bigger valves, and the hardness, you can tell when you're cutting. You know, if you've done enough cylinder heads, anybody that's done a bajillion cylinder heads knows that you can tell when you're cutting this area. If it's cast iron, when you put your cutter on this, it just goes through it like butter. When it's hardened, when you cut into this metal, you can actually see the hardened area. It's a different color, and it goes down about 1/8 of an inch even when you cut it. Like, for example, the 781 big block Chevys are the same way. So I think they're perfectly fine. I've never had any issues with them. So we did clean these heads up and MagnaFlux them, no cracks, which is good. Now there was a couple of guides in this. In these two center exhaust ports, there was two guides that we pressed out. This is actually the way you're supposed to do guides, so it had a 1/2 inch thick wall guide. What we do to put those guides in is we use a core drill. This is a core drill, and the end of the drill pilots into the hole, and we've got the head up on the seat and guide machine, aka the expensive drill press. So this pilots into the hole, and then we just bore that hole out. Well, you can see these holes here have been already bored. They had these guides in them, which is the way to do it, but they only did these two. The other 6 guides on this head, what they did is they trued them up with a tool called a knurling tool. Now, a knurling tool is just basically, I've got one here somewhere. I don't really use it very much, but I'll show it to you. So this is a knurling tool, and it just goes into the guide there, and it basically, you put a driver on here, and it basically threads the guide, and it makes a loose guide, a sloppy guide. It knurls the inside of it and tightens it up. My advice to you is don't get your guides knurled unless you're on an extreme budget. Like I say, I always discourage guide knurling. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you I've never knurled guides, because that would be a lie. The only time I knurl guides, though, is when a customer they don't have any money and they're just trying to get the thing running to get, you know, another year out of it, or they're going to sell the car, or whatever they're going to do. They're trying to patch something up, and we do get stuff like that. You know, they just don't have any money, and you'll do it to help them out. But you got to let them know. You know, and I'm letting you know now, if you get your guides knurled, that's a temporary fix, man. You're just patching the head, so it's not really the right way to do it. The right way to do it is to bore this out and use a driver. Now, we've ordered new guides for this. This is a new 1/2 inch guide. You see, it's not going to go in there. In fact, it won't even go in the head, the holes that are bored out, because it's a press fit. We have to use a driver. These have to go in. The hole that we're boring is actually a couple thousandths smaller than the size of the guide, and we use a driver to put this in. The reason we do that is because we don't want the guide coming out. So this is a guide driver. So we just take this pilot's into the end and we use this air hammer to drive them in. I'll show you how we do that. So the first order of business though with this head on the machine is to get it level. So what I've got is we got a carbide pilot in here, and I've leveled the head in both directions. So the level originally, and I can move this thing up out of the way here, it's way too low anyway. So this is a precision level. It goes in the driving head up here, we chuck it up in here, and then of course we level this all the way around 360 degrees. We put a carbide pilot in the guide, we pilot off the guide, and we use that same level to match this, because this has to be perfectly level in all directions with that guide, and it is. And once we get the head leveled, we can level the cradle this way and this way. Then we can go ahead and put our core drill in here, and we can drill those out. So now that I've got the head level, I've got the table. Oh, I don't have it locked down. Once you get the table locked down, I forgot I had to make an adjustment, so I loosened it. Okay, so that table is locked in place, and this is an air table, so I have a foot pedal down here. I can move this, but when I let go of the air at the foot pedal, it locks it in place. It's not going to move. So this is pretty typical of any cylinder head machine. So okay, so now what we want to do, now that we've got this leveled, we're confident that we're going to have, because when you put the guide in, it has to be exactly true, so that when you go to cut the seat, the guide is concentric with the seat. Otherwise it's going to be off to one side or the other, and that is no bueno. We don't want that. All right, so now we're going to pilot our core drill into that hole, and we're going to bore the guide out. So Chrysler big block has a 3/8 valve stem from the factory. This core drill is for a 11/32, like a small block Chevy or a Ford or whatever. But you can see the Chrysler has a bigger guide, so we have to use the bigger core drill for it. So we get over our guide here that we're going to cut, and we're going to readjust this machine because it's too high. We want to get right down so we can get full travel of that. You want to be able to move it though, so I keep it up high enough that I can move, from chamber to chamber. And we lock our driving head in place. Once we get that piloted in to that hole, which is right there, we lock the air table, take your foot off the pedal, and then we just go ahead and we cut this guide. We just bore this guide out. So we just bore that guide all the way through. We're literally cutting a 1/2 inch bore in there. So we punch that hole through. And then the next step, you guys, is we got to ream that hole to size. So we ream a couple thousandths out of it, because the cutter there only cuts a little bit shy, and then we final ream this. With the drill that's going to ream it to size. And that ensures that we're going to get a good press fit. Of course, we'll vacuum all the chips out, but then we're going to drive this guy in here with our driver. So then we just take some spray, some special spray oil. This stuff's made by Sun, and it's pretty good. It sticks to the guide. It's made for putting press fit stuff together. And then safety glasses, of course. I'm going to do all of these, but I'm not going to do them all on camera. We'll show you this first one. We'll go ahead and get our driver on here. And this is just we're just gonna go down until it's flush in the bore. Okay, so our guide is nice and flush in there. We've replaced it. Off camera, I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of them. And once I get the guides in, I'll come back. The importance of a precision machine straight edge and a set of feeler gauges to check the surface on these heads cannot be overstressed. What we discovered on the Chrysler heads is we had some warpage. This is a 3/1000 gauge and it's going. Now I put the 5 or the 6 in earlier and it didn't go. So you want to check in between all these cylinders, and you also want to check diagonally like this, because if the head has some twist to it, it's going to show up, and it's definitely showing up here. So you want to go both directions. It's possible you can have this straight edge going straight across and you get no warpage, but then you go sideways and you start pulling warpage there. So that indicates that the head has been twisted. And I can tell you this, you guys, it's almost a certainty that if you have, especially one of these older engines with a lot of miles on it, there's almost always going to be some warpage or twist. And so if you don't have a precision straight edge, I mean, you can't use like a yardstick or anything for this. If you don't have a precision straight edge, any machine shop in town is going to be able to check this stuff for you. And they'll do it relatively easily. And not only that, if they need to be machined, they can take care of the machining of the head as well. We do this on a rotary broach machine where we set the cylinder head up on a table, and there's a rotary broach cutter that traverses underneath it. And basically what this does is it mills the cylinder head. We do this on a rotary broach machine where we set the cylinder head up on a table, and there's a rotary broach cutter that traverses underneath it. And basically what this does is it mills the cylinder head. So then, of course, when you're done with the milling, you end up with a nice flat surface. It's a machine surface. You're not going to have any trouble sealing out air and water and the cooling system and the combustion and so forth. So milling, like I said, is extremely important, and we wanted to make sure that this was top notch, so we went ahead and resurfaced them. I only took about 0.10 of an inch off of this. It was warped about 6 or 7, so 10 was good enough to clean it up.